Everyone's seething jealousy since Olivia won the knife, and their surprise at hearing the drama with her family back home, combined into a whirlwind of hateful glee directed squarely at her. Olivia did not even have to read their thoughts. She could hear them loud and clear as people chattered like hyenas throughout the dining hall. What a horrible man. Divorcing his wife right before she and his daughter almost die in a fire? Who knows how he taught Olivia to treat other people? I heard he thought Rachel was dragging the divorce on too long and just tried to kill her and her daughter to get rid of them faster. He's a killer. What does that say about his daughter, Olivia? He still wants to go through with the divorce even if Rachel lives. He's a sociopath. This girl has the kind of moral character that the knife god chose for one of his last knives. He must be going senile at this point. Royal Perry's always been a questionable judge of character, but he's surely gone off the deep end. Carlton Perry paced outside the doors to the banquet hall frowning. What a mess, he thought. But after listening to a few moments of this, he stepped inside and spoke to the tables nearest him. If you can't respect the Perry family while you're staying in our home and eating our food, you can leave now. The people who could hear him immediately shut their mouths in response. Even though they were bitter that they hadn't won one of the last knives, they did not want to offend the knife god. Some of their families still had business and social relationships with the Perrys to preserve. Don't be angry, Mr. Perry, one woman implored, immediately pivoting to a kindly older woman demeanor. We are just concerned. Yes, her companion piped up. We don't want Royal to be deceived by anybody in an unsavory family. We just need to entertain the possibility that Olivia Johnson inherited her father's skills for deception before the matter can be put aside. The first woman nodded enthusiastically. That's right, people with bad morals like the Johnsons are basically dirtying your great estate by association. Michael Johnson tried to kill his wife and daughter in a fire. What a monster. Carlton found these people exhausting. He always had. He figured they were not worth the air it would take to tell them off and left them to fill his plate. At the other end of the room, Olivia sat at a table with her friends that still had many empty seats. The incredible array of food in front of her wasn't enough to keep her from growing increasingly irritated at the room of mean-spirited gossip. It was out of control. A young couple dressed in very flashy designer clothes looked around and wrinkled their noses. Olivia, exasperated, listened in on their thoughts as she felt her temple tingle. How is there not a single other damn seat to sit in? Do we really have to sit with this tacky, low-born trash? We can't look like we're friends with the murder family. Maybe we should just eat in our room. Olivia laughed loudly, a fake laugh that was tinged with menace. The couple was startled. Olivia turned to her friends. Hey, do you guys want to hear a joke? Lena smoothly picked up on the vibe that Olivia was up to something. Yeah, she said. Someone dressed head to toe like a billboard for some mid-tier designer doesn't want to sit at the same table as me because they think I'm tacky trash. Lena cackled, and the rest of their friends laughed too, especially since Olivia's description of the couple's outfits was so accurate. The couple's faces blazed red as they looked down at their clothes and then at each other. One whispered fiercely to the other. Wait, did I say that out loud? I swear I thought that was in my head. I don't know, Lena offered sarcastically. Maybe sales are really sagging and they just want to help get the numbers up. It's basically a charity. One of the people in the couple turned angrily to Olivia and slammed a palm on the table. You shouldn't even be here. You definitely shouldn't have won Royal Perry's last knife. It was one of the 2 last knives, Olivia retorted dryly. And I don't know why I'd trust the judgment of someone who feels so confident criticizing my family. Or someone who wears that much cologne. Olivia waved a hand in front of her face for effect, and her friends laughed because they too had been suffering at the cloud of perfume offending their noses. Millie glared at the couple, jumping to Olivia's defense. Why do you feel so much ownership over the guest list? Did you invite everybody? Millie looked around the hall. You know, after seeing how grossly most of these people are behaving, that actually makes sense. Sven looked the couple up and down. Olivia definitely has a right to be here, but you, on the other hand? I don't think dogs are allowed inside. Carlton, who had seen this altercation play out from afar, stepped up behind the couple. As a representative of the Perry family, I want to make it clear that Olivia Johnson is a guest of ours, and we are happy she's here. He turned to the room at large and called out, Anyone who is unhappy with Olivia's presence here can leave now. The Perry family does not wish to host you here. The room was silent. Nobody responded to Carlton. They would have to keep their snipes and complaints about Royal Perry's disagreeable decision to themselves. The couple that had argued with Olivia and her friends scurried out of the banquet hall. Carlton left to eat by himself, and the rest of the hall gradually had their conversations return to normal. Some of the guests were not chiming in on the rumor-mongering, but bowed their heads, silently ate their food, and did not utter another word until they walked all the way back to their own room. They were so quiet and unbothered by the proceedings because they had already quietly given the order to attack and did not want to draw attention to themselves. Those guests felt that if they could not win the last knife, nobody could. But instead of getting mad, they would get even. They would catch Olivia and Jeremy sometime between now and their journeys to the airport when they did not at all suspect it. As she ate her food, Olivia suddenly realized that, in all of the tension of the moment, she did not have two of her most important companions with her. Wait, where is Chef Theodore? And where is Chris? Sven perked up like he remembered something. I was supposed to tell you. Chef said he was tired and went back to his room to rest. He said that you should find him later to talk. And Chris? Sven tilted his head. You know, I don't know. He might be in his room. Yeah, that makes sense. Olivia tried to seem casual about it, but was concerned. He probably still feels weird about me not choosing him for the competition today, she thought internally. She felt annoyed and a little amused that he was so jealous. Lena turned to Olivia thoughtfully. Forget about Chris. You and Jeremy were really on the same wavelength today. How did you two coordinate so well? That was crazy. Olivia silently cursed, thinking to herself, so it wasn't just me who was thinking that Chris was missing now because of something to do with Jeremy. Jeremy and I had all the same choices because of luck, I guess. We didn't coordinate at all. I had some hunches, like the Olivia thing in the first round, but it just came down to luck. Olivia hoped her friends would buy this, but certainly none of them would guess that she won because of her mind-reading powers. I guess you just have to trust luck to let things fall your way. Oh yeah, I do not have that kind of luck, Millie joked. Let me know where I can get some. At the next table, the twins Camilla and Cameron Pell ate quietly. Camilla, unhappy with the food, mostly just pushed her meal around her plate with her fork. Camilla glanced at Cameron and saw that he was suddenly looking in Millie's direction, smiling. She tossed her fork down onto her plate with a clatter. Cameron jumped and looked in her direction. Camilla signed at him, annoyed. So you were completely unbothered that we didn't win one of the last knives? Of course I'm bothered, he signed back. Camilla huffed and rolled her eyes. You don't seem like it. You've still got a great appetite and googly eyes for your nerd girlfriend. It would have been great to win, but we didn't need it. Our family would have been excited if we had come back with one of the last knives, but they don't need it either. What do you want me to say? Cameron signed, confused about his sister's mood. I want you to be a little mad we didn't find a knife and get to the end. It's like this whole trip was for nothing. Camilla signed, shaking her head. Cameron smiled sympathetically. His sister had always been very competitive. Do you really think we would have won the last challenge anyway? I don't think we would have chosen the same things. Like any of the same things, at all. Didn't you hear Olivia? Camilla shot back. She just told her friends that it was all luck that she and Jeremy won. Cameron rolled his eyes and picked up his fork, choosing to not engage with Camilla anymore. He knew she was just upset and looking to pick a fight. This mood would blow over. Camilla took a few breaths, the wind out of her sails with Cameron done responding to her. She relaxed her tense shoulders and waved a hand, then signed to Cameron. "Forget it, whatever. And anyway, I do really like Olivia. If it couldn't be either of us, it's way better that she won over any of the other people in this room." Cameron thought this over and nodded slightly. Camilla, having won Cameron's attention once more, pouted and started signing furiously again. "However, I still feel like it's such a loss. Even if you didn't feel really strongly that we should get the knife, you could have tried to win for me. When are you going to get some fighting spirit in you? You're such a pushover. If you want something, you have to go for it." Cameron sighed and smirked. "You're just upset and want to take the energy out by getting into a fight with me. Why don't you go for a run? Or go scream into a pillow or take a hot shower or something?" This only seemed to make Camilla angrier. "Don't tell me what I want," she signed angrily. "If I did what you told me to do, wouldn't that make me more of a pushover?" Cameron signed to her, expressionless. Camilla was about to snap back when her cell phone buzzed on the table next to her plate. She looked at the screen. "It's Grandpa," she signed. She answered the phone in a low voice. "Hello? Grandfather?" "Hello, Camilla," the grandfather said on the other end of the line. "Where are you and your brother?" "We're in Paris." "You're in Paris? Oh." Their grandfather seemed shocked, but then remembered. "You went to the competition for the Knife Gods last night, didn't you?" "Yes." Camilla looked concerned. "Is something wrong?" "I was just calling you because you've not updated me in a while in your search for your missing cousin, and it's been a long time. I know New York is big, but it isn't that big." Camilla and Cameron's Uncle Pete Pell had asked them to follow Olivia, but they had been trying to find their missing cousin since long before that. They just, unfortunately, had run out of clues as to where she had gone. "Grandfather, we're doing our best, but I don't think we have any updates to give you right now." Camilla met Cameron's eyes, both of their faces full of sadness. Jacqueline had been missing for 13 years. We think the trail's gone cold." "Keep looking. You must find her," Camilla Pell's grandfather urged her on the other end of her cell phone. "If Jacqueline is still alive, she would be as old as you and your brother. We've lost so much, but she would still be so young and have so much life ahead of her." "Yes, grandfather," Camilla replied sadly. She and Cameron, making eye contact, both felt pity for their grandfather. It was difficult to think about him fantasizing that he would never get to meet the young woman his missing granddaughter had become and see her live out the rest of her life. When their Uncle Pete Pell had given them the task of hunting down their cousin, their grandfather's hope of seeing her again had been renewed, though he had given up on that years before. "I caught her when she was born, you know," their grandfather said in a distant voice. "She was a tiny, tiny baby, so delicate and so quiet. She didn't cry for a long time. We were worried she wasn't breathing. She was just quiet. And then, just a few years later, she was kidnapped. Jacqueline." Camilla didn't respond. She didn't even remember this cousin who had been a toddler at the same time as her. Their grandfather did have a picture on his bookshelf of Jacqueline when she was last with them. She was indeed small and had a sweet smile. Their grandfather cleared his throat and seemed to realize that Camilla was not reminiscing with him. "Anyway, don't cause any trouble over there. That is such a dangerous event. And make sure you're listening to your brother once in a while." "Yes, grandfather, of course." Camilla exchanged goodbyes with him and hung up her phone. Camilla stared out into space thoughtfully as Cameron polished off his meal. "Cameron, do you think Jacqueline is still alive?" Cameron considered the question, then grimly signed back. "I don't know what happened all those years ago, but even if she's still alive, she would have lived a miserable life. The last thing we heard is that the kidnappers were almost caught and abandoned her somewhere when they were getting away. They can't have left her anywhere good." Camilla nodded. "I think she's dead, too." Cameron rolled his eyes. "I didn't say that exactly." Camilla played with her hair, anxious. "Well, if we keep looking, we can either help give grandfather some renewed hope, or find out she's dead for sure and put this whole thing to rest. I feel like either scenario is better than where he is with it now." Cameron shrugged and forced a smile. She wasn't really asking for his input, so he wouldn't bother giving it. After the meal, Olivia was relieved to hurry out of the banquet hall. It felt like she was on display in front of 1,000 angry eyes, all belonging to people who wished she were dead, which wasn't really any kind of exaggeration. She stood in front of Chris Jones' door and lightly knocked. "Who is it?" Chris's voice emanated from behind the door. "Sven?" He was slurring his words. Olivia heard his footsteps approach and didn't answer, knowing he was looking through the peephole. She heard a chain unlatch and the lock click. The door opened. "It's you," Chris said breathlessly. Olivia held her hands tightly behind her back. "Are you disappointed I'm not Sven?" Chris waved her inside. "Of course not. You're way more exciting than Sven. Come in." Olivia took in the sight of his room, which was in disarray. "I was thinking we could go visit Dusty in the hospital, and then I need to go find Chef Theodore in case you want to come with me." Olivia stepped farther into the room and felt like she was hit in the face with a cloud of alcohol. "Oh my God, Chris, have you been drinking? Like a lot?" "I've been drinking a little," Chris said defensively. He closed the door and took a few tries before he was able to latch the chain lock again, scraping it uselessly against the wall around it. Olivia approached a table where she saw an empty wine bottle and a second one that had less than a glass left in it. "You call this a little? Did you drink all of this by yourself? You're gonna make yourself sick, Chris." "It was a great wine. You just wish you had some. You want some?" Chris picked up a glass and unsteadily lifted the empty bottle, pouring a couple of drops into the glass. Confused, he looked inside the bottle, realized he had the wrong one and put it down. He picked up the second bottle and poured the rest of it into the glass. "No, I don't think it's a good time. I have to go into the city later to see Dusty. Wendy's already there. Everyone has it out for me, too. I don't think I should impair my senses right now." "Didn't Steve Shook go with Wendy?" Chris asked, still holding the glass out to Olivia. "Yeah, but this is such a dangerous place. Dusty already got shot. I don't know if Steve is enough protection." "Oh," Chris said simply. He sipped the wine he poured for Olivia. "Maybe that's enough wine for tonight, Chris." Olivia shook her head. "Drink a bunch of water. Get them to send you like a metric ton of vitamins. Go to bed early." "You care about me?" Chris, drunk and emotional, looked genuinely touched. He smiled helplessly. Olivia stifled a feeling of impatience. "Of course I care about you, Chris. You didn't think I do?" She took a step toward Chris to take the glass from his hand and recoiled at the smell. "My God, I can barely breathe near you. You're like oozing alcohol." "You don't like it?" Chris cocked his head and looked at Olivia in a way that was probably intended to be seductive, but looked more sleepy. He swallowed another mouthful of wine. "Chris, nobody likes that." Olivia smiled and shook her head. "I wanted you to come with me to see Dusty, but forget it. You need to get some rest for tomorrow. Sleep it off." "I'll come with you. You need me to protect you." Chris saw that Olivia was turning to leave and stepped toward her. He stumbled to the space between her and the door. Olivia tried to step around him. "I don't think you can even protect your shins from the furniture in the state you're in." "Don't worry about it. Just get some rest. I'll ask someone else to come with me, like, I don't know, Jeremy." "Who?" Chris's alcohol-exaggerated reaction to Jeremy's name seemed more like despair or horror. "Why do you want Jeremy to go with you?" "Because he's a great guy. You need to go to bed, Chris." No. Chris gestured with the glass of wine, red liquid threatening to slosh out of it. You can't let him come with you. You're not allowed to look at him. I will not allow it. Olivia felt her scalp prickle at those words. How dare he say I am not allowed to do anything? Who does he think he is? She thought internally. Chris, this isn't funny. You can't tell me what to do and who to be friends with. You certainly can't allow or not allow me to do things. You should know better than to drink this much. You're acting crazy. Crazy? I'm not acting crazy, Olivia. Chris thought for a second, his anger completely melting in a split second into despair again. I am acting crazy. You're right. It's just that I was so jealous when you chose Jeremy instead of me today. Olivia was momentarily stunned. She was right, of course, that he was jealous about her partnering up with Jeremy for the competition. Of course he was. Chris continued to whine to Olivia, looking very dramatically distressed. Tell me what to do, Olivia. What else can I do? I thought you had feelings for me. It seemed like things were going so great and I was so happy. I was elated. I'd never used that word and certainly never felt it before. But look at me, I was elated because of you. I thought people who said they were happy enough to feel like they're walking on air were totally full of it, but I had that feeling. I walked on the air. I walked on it, and you're right. I did feel crazy because of you. Good crazy. Olivia felt like she should put a stop to this, but was also surprised and touched that Chris was so out of control in his feelings for her. The poor guy's pouring his heart out. Whether or not this is how he really feels sober. What do I even say to this? Chris's bliss once again crashed down into an intense sadness as a shadow came over his face. But then, the way I felt when you picked Jeremy today, it was such a slap in the face. Do you even care about me? Do you even care about the air? It's like I was walking on it, but then realized I wasn't walking on anything and just fell down through the air. Like that coyote in the Roadrunner. I fell down so far into that cartoon canyon. What did I do? Tell me what to do. Olivia had to keep chuckling at Chris's drunken metaphors, but she felt a lot of tenderness towards him too. She gently put her hands on his face. You did not do anything, and you do not have to do anything, Chris. Chris's face immediately softened. He leaned his cheek into her hand. He closed his eyes. Don't go to him. Who? Olivia was confused. Jeremy? Chris pulled back from Olivia's hands. Ugh, even how you say his name sounds like you want him so badly, I can tell. You aren't allowed to mention his name anymore. Chris, I don't know how you got to be so jealous. Jeremy's mom is my godmother. He's like my older brother, and because of his mom, he's also basically my older brother. Your brother? Chris was very happy to hear this, but was surprised that this news also made him feel a little bit of pity for Jeremy. That poor guy clearly had a thing for Olivia. Who wouldn't? But all this time, she'd just seen him like a brother. Olivia watched Chris's eyebrows knit together as his drunk mind worked furiously. What are you thinking about now? She definitely didn't want to try to listen in. What made it out of his mouth was enough of a mess. What about me? Chris stared into Olivia's eyes. What do you mean, what about you? What am I to you? Chris sat on his bed looking up at her. He is definitely something to me, Olivia thought to herself, caught off guard for how to answer. If I said he is nothing, that would be a lie. And if I said he was like a brother to me, that would be a lie. But if I were to say I loved him, I don't think we're at that level yet. Chris impatiently stamped a foot like a little kid throwing a tantrum. Tell me! I need you to tell me what I am to you. This was so different from Chris's normal, aloof, composed self that Olivia barely stifled a laugh. You want to know what you are to me. She repeated what he said back to him to buy herself some time. She still honestly did not know how to answer, especially with him in such a drunk, out-of-control, emotional state. Would he even remember what she said? Yes, I need to know, Olivia. There are plenty of fish in the sea, but none of them are like you. You're completely unique. I would be so mad at myself if I let you out of my life." I never thought I'd hear him talk like this, Olivia thought in awe. "So I need an answer," Chris said desperately. "Who am I to you?" In the dimly lit room, Olivia stood frozen at the threshold, her gaze fixed on Chris. His eyes, usually sharp with confidence, now held a liquid vulnerability. The scent of wine was still pungent, but she'd been in here long enough that it was at least tolerable now. "Olivia," Chris began, his voice more pleading than she'd ever heard it. "We need to figure this out. What are we doing?" She could hear the passion in his slurred words, see it in the way he leaned toward her as if being pulled by an invisible force. It was clear that the alcohol stripped away his restraint, leaving raw emotion in its place. "Chris, it's not that simple," Olivia said, her voice a whisper compared to the storm of thoughts raging in her mind. How did she feel about him? He was like a riddle wrapped in a mystery. Exciting, yet exasperating. "But how do you feel about me?" Chris pressed, his gaze searching hers for something, anything that might give him the answers he so desperately sought. Olivia felt her heart racing, a whirlwind of emotion swirling within her. She liked Chris. No, she more than liked him. But admitting that felt like stepping off of a cliff without knowing how far the ground was. Their relationship was like a tangled web, woven from moments of closeness, frustration, and unspoken desires. Olivia's mind was a hurricane, thoughts whipping around so fast she could hardly catch them. At the center of it all was a memory, vivid and haunting. Mark DeLillo, her fiancé in another life, the man she had loved with every fiber of her being, until he orchestrated her death. It was a betrayal so deep it carved through her soul, sending her here on a mission to get revenge on everyone that had wronged her. And now there was Chris, his eyes full of a drunken earnestness that unnerved her. How could she trust him when Mark's deception still echoed in her bones? How could she trust herself to make the right choice when her last choice had ended in disaster? Her emotions for Chris were a roller coaster, soaring one moment and plummeting the next. Could she trust him not to break her heart? Could she trust that he wouldn't turn out to be another Mark DeLillo? Her gut said one thing, her heart another, and her mind couldn't make sense of it all. She felt the weight of Chris's gaze on her, heavy with expectation. He was waiting for an answer, but all she had were questions. Olivia's gaze lingered on Chris, who seemed so vulnerable and lost in his inebriated state. The sight of him, passionate and yet so unguarded, should have stirred something deep within her. But all it did was throw her into a state of bewilderment. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation nudged a laugh out of her, a light, airy sound that hovered between amusement and disbelief. Chris's face shifted, the frown forming on his lips, indicating that her laughter hadn't landed as she intended. Her eyes, usually so full of confidence and jest, now held a touch of pain, a vulnerability he tried to mask, but was too drunk to conceal fully. Inside, Chris felt the sting of her laughter like a slap. Was his affection for her just a punchline? Her chuckles echoed in his mind. Why does she always laugh when I'm being serious? He wondered, the internal dialogue clouded by the fog of his drunkenness. Does she not see that I'm laying my heart out in front of her? He struggled to piece together his thoughts, his feelings a jigsaw puzzle scattered across the floor of his mind. Chris looked at Olivia, his heart thumping erratically, his words slurring slightly as he mustered the courage to ask, "Am I a joke to you, Olivia? Is that all it is?" Olivia saw the change in Chris's demeanor, the subtle hurt that clouded his features, and immediately regretted her reaction. "Chris, I'm sorry," she said, her voice softening. "I didn't mean to laugh at you. It's just, everything's a bit overwhelming right now." She watched him for a moment, his face still etched with a blend of confusion and hurt. "You need to get some rest," she continued, her concern genuine. "We can talk about all of this when you're sober, okay?" Turning toward the door, she took a step forward, only to be halted by his voice. "I'm not drunk," Chris insisted, though his words wavered, betraying his claim. Olivia paused, looking back as he stumbled slightly on his way to her. She couldn't suppress the frown that crept onto her lips as the strong scent of wine reached her, confirming what they both already knew. "Chris," she said gently, "you don't have to pretend. It's okay. Just, let's talk in the morning, all right?" Chris's voice had a hint of pleading, almost as if he was asking for more than just an answer. "Olivia, just tell me, how do you feel about me?" Olivia sighed, her voice patient yet firm. "Chris, you've had too much to drink. We can talk about everything tomorrow, okay?" She turned away, stepping towards the door, eager to escape the intensity of the moment. But Chris wasn't ready to let it go. He reached out, trying to keep her there, but his hand barely grazed her before he stumbled forward, his balance betrayed by the alcohol. "Chris!" Olivia exclaimed, her quick reflexes kicking in. She caught him by the shoulders, struggling to keep both of them upright. It was like trying to stabilize a newborn giant, awkward and unpredictable. Olivia managed to guide Chris's stumbling steps back towards the bed. Every muscle in her body worked overtime as she supported his taller, heavier body. "Come on, you've got to sit down," she urged, her voice laced with a mix of concern and amusement at the absurdity of the situation. I'm fine, Chris slurred. Chris's feet dragged on the floor, his body leaning heavily against hers. With one last coordinated effort, Olivia maneuvered him onto the edge of the bed, his legs sprawling in front of him. Olivia, feeling a sudden pull of tenderness amidst the chaos of the evening, leaned down beside Chris. Her head found a place on his chest, a spot that felt like it was made just for her to listen to the steady rhythm of his heart. The sound was comforting, a reminder that beneath the surface, there was a real connection between them, something that went beyond titles or labels. "Why do you need a label so badly, Chris?" she whispered, her breath warm against his shirt. "Why question my feelings? You're my fiancé, you know. It's an arranged marriage, sure, but it's still true. We're engaged," Olivia said. A small, wry smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "Would you rather be my boyfriend?" She let out a soft snort of laughter at the thought. "Kind of feels like a demotion, doesn't it?" Olivia's smile faded to a frown as she waited for any sign of a response, but none came. She lifted her head slightly and peered at Chris's face, finding him in a deep, peaceful slumber, oblivious to her words and the turmoil of emotions they stirred. Olivia couldn't help but pause for a moment, watching the soft rise and fall of Chris's chest as he slept. There was something disarmingly cute about him like this, his usual bravado and intensity, replaced by the innocence of slumber. She smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her as she admired the gentle curve of his lips and the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks. "You're pretty adorable when the world isn't watching, you know," she thought to herself, her smile widening. With the utmost care, she reached out and lightly tapped his nose. "Sweet dreams, Chris," she whispered, her voice soft with affection. Then came to the ordeal of trying to get his tall frame fully onto the bed. She grabbed hold of his legs, which were still dangling off the edge, and tugged with all her might. "Come on, you big oaf," she grunted, her efforts turning comical as his body refused to budge. "Why are you so heavy? What did they feed you, lead?" she muttered under her breath, puffing out her cheeks as she gave another pull. She imagined Chris laughing at her if he were awake, and that only doubled her resolve. "You owe me for this," Olivia said as she continued to struggle. As Olivia grappled with Chris's dead weight, the door creaked open, and in walks Sven, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Olivia, mid-struggle, seemed to be manhandling a very unconscious Chris onto the bed, her back turned to the door. Sven's mind raced with uncomfortable thoughts. Did she drug him? Or did they have a wild night? He couldn't shake off the awkward feeling that he had just intruded on something private, something he wasn't sure he wanted any part of. Meanwhile, Olivia, entirely focused on her task, remained blissfully unaware of the suspicious scenario she was presenting. Finally, noticing Sven's reflection in the mirror, she exhaled in relief. "Sven, oh good, you're here. Can you give me a hand?" she asked, assuming his presence was timely rather than suspect. Sven hesitated, his discomfort evident. The situation could be misinterpreted in so many ways, and his imagination was not helping. "Olivia, what's happening here?" Sven asked, his voice laced with a mixture of confusion and concern. Olivia, still struggling with Chris's limbs, barely managed to glance back. "Oh, nothing scandalous, I assure you," she puffed out, a little breathless from her efforts. "Chris just had a bit too much to drink and passed out. I'm trying to get him onto the bed properly so he doesn't wake up with a crick in his neck." Sven arched an eyebrow, his skepticism clear. "Right, because people always end up half off the bed after a few drinks, naturally," he quipped. Internally, Sven couldn't help but fret over the implications. Chris passed out with Olivia attempting to maneuver him. The optics weren't great. It could spark rumors that would tarnish his friend's already complicated social standing. He stepped forward, but not too close, his own hands betraying none of his hesitancy that knotted his thoughts. "Nothing else happened before this, or to cause this, right?" he inquired, his tone even but probing. "Absolutely not," Olivia asserted, blowing a stray hair from her face as she attempted another tug at Chris's arm. "We had a conversation, and Chris might have misjudged his limits with the wine." Sven approached to help, though he still seemed wary as he helped Olivia hoist Chris's legs up onto the bed. "And you're sure it's wine? Not some kind of love potion or something?" he teased. "Oh, absolutely." Olivia played along, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm all about those ancient family recipes for enchantments. Next time, I'll aim for a spell that makes him less heavy." Sven's guards were still up as his eyes shifted from Olivia to Chris. Sven couldn't shake his reservations. "This doesn't look good, Olivia. Not for you, and certainly not for Chris. What if someone else had walked in instead of me?" Olivia's patience began to chip away as Sven's insinuations piled on. With a huff, she straightened up, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, her eyes flashing a clear signal of her irritation. "Sven, you're barking up the wrong tree here," she asserted with a hint of exasperation in her voice. She met Sven's gaze squarely, her own eyes earnest, and a little hurt that her integrity was in question. "You've known me long enough, Sven. Do you really think I'd be so reckless with Chris's, or my own reputation?" Sven's stoic facade showed a crack as he registered Olivia's frustration and the sincerity in her voice. He let out a slow breath, the protective tension in his shoulders easing as he processed her words. "Okay, Olivia, I believe you," he conceded. With an embarrassed smile, Sven began to walk away. Sven was halfway to the door when Olivia turned back to Chris, who was now stretched out on the bed, his breathing deep and even in sleep. She hesitated for a moment, looking down at him before she reached for the top button of his shirt. Sven, who had been about to leave, couldn't help but watch, his eyes widening in a mix of confusion and concern. She was lying. She was lying this entire time, Sven frantically thought. Sven couldn't conceal it anymore. He turned to face her, folding his arms, and asked in a tone of utter confusion, Olivia, what the hell is going on here?" In the dimly lit room, Olivia's fingers were just beginning to undo the buttons on Chris's shirt when Sven's sharp intake of breath snapped her back to reality. Oh my God, I'm not looking, Sven blurted out, hastily covering his eyes with one hand while pointing accusingly at Olivia with the other. I mean, you said you're barking up the wrong tree, Sven. And here I am thinking I was being paranoid, but nope, I was barking up the right tree all along. Olivia paused, her hands frozen midair. An expression of utter confusion sat on her face. Sven, what are you even? Sven, still not looking, stumbled his way toward the door, rambling as he went. I should leave. Yes, I should definitely leave first because you said, and I quote, nothing's going on, and now you're just here doing whatever this is. Olivia let out a huff of exasperation. Sven, if you just... But Sven was on a roll. I get it, It's like you two have a thing, and maybe you don't, but if you do, it should be special. Because you, Olivia, you're a special girl. Chris is, well, he's Chris. And special girls deserve special times, not whatever this half-baked, wine-induced version of romance is. Olivia couldn't help but smirk at Sven's awkwardly phrased sentiment, even as she tried to contain her laughter. Sven, for the last time, I'm just trying to... Nope, I'm not hearing this. Sven interrupted, now reaching for the doorknob. I'm going to walk out this door, and when I close it, I'll erase this whole awkward memory from my brain. You two can be special without a witness. Sven was halfway through the door, the image of Olivia unbuttoning Chris's shirt still burning uncomfortably in his mind, when Olivia's voice stopped him cold. Sven, wait! It's not what you think. He spilled wine all over himself, she called out, her voice laced with a mix of amusement and a hint of annoyance. Sven's hand froze on the doorknob, and he swung back around, his gaze finally settling on Olivia. The room was silent except for the soft rustle of fabric. Oh, Sven uttered, the realization dawning on him. That makes more sense. Olivia nodded, a half smile on her face. I just wanted to change him into a clean shirt so he's more comfortable. That's all. Sven's cheeks colored with a faint blush of embarrassment, and he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Right, yeah, of course, I totally jumped to conclusions there, sorry about that. Olivia's laughter filled the room, lightening the mood. It's okay, Sven. I guess I can see how it looked from where you were standing. Olivia glanced at the door where Sven had made his awkward exit, and then down at Chris, murmuring something incoherent in his sleep. His shirt drenched in wine, clearly needing changing. She called out to Sven before he could disappear completely. Sven, hold up, can you give me a hand? He's heavier than he looks, Olivia said, her voice carrying a hint of laughter. With a sigh, Sven turned back and re-entered the room, his expression a mix of reluctance and duty. Together, they carefully maneuvered Chris into a sitting position, his head lolling as he groaned softly, still lost in the fog of sleep. They managed to slip the stained shirt off, Sven taking extra care not to look too closely at Chris, his gaze firmly fixed on the wall ahead. Careful with his arm, Olivia instructed, her eyes flickering with concern as Chris stirred, his brow furrowing slightly in his sleep. They managed to get him into the fresh shirt, Sven's fingers fumbling slightly with the buttons. Never thought I'd be playing dress-up with Chris Jones, he muttered. Olivia couldn't help but smirk. So I'm a special girl, huh? She teased, her voice light and playful. Sven's face turned a deeper shade of red and he averted his gaze. That came out wrong, he stammered, clearly wishing he could take back his earlier words. With Chris finally decent and resting more comfortably, Sven made a beeline for the door, his parting words quick and flustered. He's all yours, I'll see myself out. Sven mostly believed Olivia that there was nothing improper happening in this room, but there was still a seed of doubt that made him want to sprint out of there as quickly as he could. The door clicked shut behind Sven, and Olivia turned back to Chris just as his eyes fluttered open, the remnants of sleep still clouding his gaze. Olivia? Chris's voice was groggy, his movement sluggish as he tried to sit up. What happened? Just a little wine spill, Olivia replied, moving to help him. You're in a clean shirt now, thanks to your knight in shining armor, Sven. Chris' gaze slid to the floor, his brows knitted together in a daze of confusion. Sven? He mumbled, his voice thick from the remnants of sleep and alcohol. Olivia nodded, suppressing a smile. Yeah, he just helped me with something, she replied, watching Chris attempt to orient himself, his hand massaging his temples as he squinted against the dizziness. Despite the situation, Olivia couldn't help but find the sight endearing. Chris caught smirk playing on Olivia's lips and narrowed his eyes, an attempt at sternness despite the alcohol-induced fog. Why are you smirking at me? He asked, his voice still groggy. No reason, Olivia responded, the smirk evolving into a full smile now, unable to contain the amusement from her voice. Chris studied her for a moment, noting the persistent smile. And why are you smiling like that? He prodded. Olivia tilted her head, considering him with a playful glint in her eyes. You're just cute, that's all, she admitted, her tone light and teasing. At her words, Chris let out a reluctant nod, rolling his eyes as if to say, Yeah, right. Olivia's smile faltered into a slight frown as she caught Chris's dismissive reaction. Why did you roll your eyes? She asked, a hint of concern lacing her words. Chris, however, deftly sidestepped the question, his focus shifting. He propped himself up slightly, a shadow of his usual sharpness returning as he met her gaze. Why are you still here? He inquired, his tone indifferent. The question caught Olivia off guard, her defenses snapping up instinctively. What do you mean? She retorted, her voice edged with offense. Chris's expression remained unreadable, his eyes locked onto hers. Shouldn't you be somewhere with Jeremy? He asked pointedly, the implication clear in his voice. Olivia couldn't help but roll her eyes at the insinuation. You can't seriously still be jealous, she scoffed, challenging his poised facade with a hint of exasperation. Chris's demeanor turned colder. I have nothing to be jealous of, he stated firmly, his voice devoid of warmth. Olivia's frown deepened as she stood, her posture stiffening with a mix of concern and irritation. You must still be drunk, she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. You get this awful attitude when you've had too much. Chris's jaw tightened as he looked up at her, his eyes glinting with a sober clarity that contradicted her words. I've never been more sober, he countered coolly. Maybe you should leave. The abruptness of his suggestion stunned Olivia, but she quickly pieced together the reason behind his demeanor. Is this about your question earlier? About us? She asked, her voice softening. The memory of their unresolved conversation about defining their relationship hung between them, a silent specter of Chris's underlying hurt. He was too proud to admit it, but she knew him well enough to read the signs. You can't be that upset about it, Olivia said, attempting to bridge the gap with reassurance. My feelings for you are clear. But Chris's defenses were up, his pride a barrier she couldn't quite dismantle. There's nothing clear about you, he shot back, his words sharp and final. Olivia's patience was wearing thin, and her frustration crept into her voice. I'm not going to keep putting up with this coldness, Chris, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Especially after I just helped you out when you were too drunk to even stand. I didn't ask for your help, Chris retorted, his voice cold and distant, creating an invisible wall between them. That's just it, isn't it? I helped you because I cared about you, Chris. Olivia's voice rose, a mix of passion and exasperation. Chris's expression hardened, and his next words were like a slap across the face. You only care about yourself, Olivia. Her heart skipped a beat, the accusation stinging because it couldn't be further from the truth. How can you even say that? Olivia challenged, her voice trembling with anger. You're calling me selfish? Look at you. So wrapped up in your own pride that you can't even accept help without making it a battle of egos. You're selfish and unlovable, and I don't know why I bothered trying to be with someone who can't see beyond their own reflection," Chris said, his words harsh and unyielding. Olivia froze, his words hitting her like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then slowly she found her voice. "You don't mean that, Chris," she said quietly, her voice tinged with hurt. Olivia's eyes brimmed with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall, especially not in front of Chris. His declaration hung heavy in the air, an undeniable weight pressing down on her heart. "I mean every word," Chris said, his voice void of the warmth she once knew. Battling the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm her, Olivia forced herself to take deep, even breaths. She would not give Chris the satisfaction of seeing the pain he had inflicted. With the strength she didn't feel, she lifted her chin and met his gaze, her own eyes a mirror of the resolve solidifying within her. Without another word, she turned on her heel and left the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click that echoed the closing of a chapter she wasn't sure she could reopen. As Olivia stepped into the quiet of the castle's hallway, a few rebellious tears escaped, tracing a warm path down her cheeks. She swiped at them hastily, her pride refusing to let them linger. She needed to compose herself, to build back the walls that Chris had unceremoniously torn down. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and before she could mask her disarray, Millie and Lena appeared around the corner. Their expressions shifted from casual to concerned in an instant when they saw her. "Olivia, what happened?" Millie's voice was a mix of worry and surprise as she reached Olivia's side, her eyes scanning her friend's face for clues. "Yeah, where's Chris?" Lena chimed in, her brows furrowed in confusion and concern. Olivia looked at her friends, the sting of tears still threatening to return. She took a deep breath, trying to find the words that wouldn't betray her turmoil. "Let's not talk about it, okay?" Olivia's tone left little room for argument, yet her voice softened at the edges, revealing the plea hidden beneath the surface. Millie's lips parted, a question hanging on the tip of her tongue, but Olivia's expression halted any further inquiry. Lena's eyes mirrored Millie's concern, but she too remained silent, understanding the unspoken need for space. Olivia's demeanor shifted as she clutched her resolve like a shield. "We need to get to the hospital. It's important," she said, injecting a sense of urgency into her words. Millie and Lena exchanged a glance, their confusion palpable. The rapid shift from distress to determination puzzled them, but they knew better than to press Olivia when her mind was set. "Are you sure you're okay to go now?" Millie asked, her voice laced with caution. Olivia nodded, her eyes not meeting theirs. "I have a plan, and we can't waste any more time. Let's go," she insisted, already moving down the hallway with purpose. Left with little choice, Millie and Lena shared a quick, silent conversation with their eyes before hurrying after Olivia, their footsteps echoing in the corridor. Millie and Lena looked at Olivia, still confused by the change of plans. Olivia had been telling everyone that they were going to go to the hospital tomorrow to check in on Wendy and Dusty, but here she was now insisting they go today. The two girls exchanged a look, daring the other one to question Olivia's rash decision. Finally, Millie spoke up. "But Olivia, everything is already set for us to visit Wendy tomorrow. There are still so many things to be done before we leave. Shouldn't we just stick to the original schedule?" Olivia smirked at her friends, glad to have a distraction from the memory of her awful conversation with Chris. She checked in each direction before pulling them closer so that no one might overhear them. "We can't visit Wendy tomorrow because that's when we're leaving for New York." "What?" Lena gasped, then quickly lowered her voice. "But we're not even packed. Why leave tomorrow?" "Think about it." Olivia paused for a moment, hoping her friends would see why she had to keep the details of this plan from them. "None of us are safe here, especially me. I made sure everyone knew we were leaving 2 days from now, so they would think they have more time to attack." A look of recognition came over Millie and Lena's faces. "If we leave tomorrow, no one will be expecting it. And we'll be able to throw them off their game," Olivia continued. "So as far as anyone else knows," Olivia suddenly made her voice much louder, "we're leaving the day after tomorrow." She winked at Millie and Lena, signaling that they should stick to that story should anyone ask. "Okay, I got it. That all makes sense." Millie nodded along as Olivia explained. "So we'll go see Wendy now, then rush back and pack all of our things." "Should we tell anyone else?" Lena asked. "Maybe we should take one of the boys with us for protection." Olivia thought about this. While she knew the three of them were perfectly capable, and Olivia always had her powers to back them up, she had to admit it would be nice to have a sort of bodyguard along with them, just in case. Besides, all of the boys came from such high standing in society that people were less likely to mess with them if they had one of the boys along. Olivia's first thoughts of who to bring went immediately to Jeremy. He was the most obvious answer. He had done so well in the challenges this week, and the two of them had grown to be such a good team. But the tension between them had grown a lot, and Olivia didn't want to accidentally give him the wrong impression. "Let's ask Francis to go," Olivia declared. At the sound of his name, Lena immediately broke into a fierce blush, but Millie looked at Olivia quizzically. "Don't you think Jeremy might be the better choice for this?" Millie watched her friend's face for clues as to why she hadn't wanted to ask her former teammate. No offense to Francis or anything. "No, not Jeremy." Olivia shot Millie a look that told her she should stop pressing for now. Clearly, something happened between the two of them to make Olivia feel less than comfortable having Jeremy along for this ride. "Francis is the best choice for this. Lena, do you want to call him?" Olivia turned to her friend, but just the thought of calling Francis on the phone made the color drain from Lena's face. I... Lena stuttered, unable to get the words out. Millie chuckled and shook her head at Lena's nerves. It seemed that even though Lena and Francis had done so well teaming up together for the Knife God competition, thinking about Francis still made their sweet friend clam up. "I can do it." Millie pulled out her phone and began to dial Francis's number. She waited as the phone rang, then looked at Olivia. "And what if he doesn't answer? Then should we maybe ask Jeremy?" Olivia mulled it over in her mind. She knew it would be better if they took someone, but she really didn't want to have to deal with the awkwardness of that situation tonight. But just as Olivia was about to make a decision, Francis picked up on the other end. "Francis?" Millie whispered into the phone. "I know it's late, but we're going to go visit Wendy in the hospital now. Will you come with us?" Lena and Olivia watched with bated breath, unable to hear what Francis was saying. Finally, Millie smiled and gave the girls a thumbs up. "Great. We'll meet you outside the manor in 10 minutes. Millie hung up the phone and stuffed it back in her pocket. "We're all set." "Great. Let's just go back to the room and get something warmer to wear. It's chilly out this late at night." Olivia stood and led her friends down the hall. Just as they began to make their way, Olivia could swear she caught sight of a shadow at the end of the hall, scurrying in the other direction. She tried to concentrate on listening to whoever's thoughts it might be, but she came up with nothing. Either the person was too far away, which meant there was no way they would have been able to hear Olivia and her friends, or they weren't thinking at all. Either way, Olivia looked towards the space the shadow had been in nervously, then quickly tried to usher her friends off. "Come on, let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps at night." "Ditto," Lena agreed, eager to get back to the safety of her own room. Down the hall and around the corner, the mysterious shadow lurked in one of the many stairwells of the Perry Castle. A man in all black pulled out a phone and quickly dialed a number. He held the phone up to his ear, and the other side answered almost instantly. "Yeah, I found her." The man confirmed it on the phone. "Sounds like they're planning to leave the day after tomorrow, so we're still on schedule for tomorrow." The voice on the other end said something before the man in all black answered, "It's all set. I found the perfect person to execute the plan. Everything is taken care of." And with that, the man stuffed his phone back into his jacket pocket and snuck off into the night. After changing into warmer outfits, Lena, Millie, and Olivia made their way downstairs and found Francis waiting for them in the foyer. He was dressed slightly better than usual and had styled his hair with purpose. As soon as Lena saw him, her stomach dropped. She froze halfway down the grand staircase, grabbed Millie's arm, and whispered in her ear, "Oh my God, he looks like a frickin' prince." "Well then, that's perfect, because to us, you're a frickin' princess." Millie squeezed Lena's arm back supportively. "There you are," Francis addressed the girls, smiling bashfully when his gaze landed on Lena. Just then, Jeremy entered from the front door, rubbing his hands together to combat the chill. "Car's all ready. Do you know when the girls are coming down?" Francis nodded towards the girls, and Jeremy smiled brightly when he saw Olivia. Olivia was so startled to see Jeremy that she missed the last step and tumbled forward. She tried to catch herself, but it was too late. She shut her eyes tight, preparing herself for impact, but was surprised when she landed safely in someone's arms. "Whoa there, you gotta be more careful." Olivia opened her eyes and looked up at Jeremy. She quickly righted herself, smoothing out her jacket awkwardly. "Thanks," she answered curtly, refusing to make too much eye contact with Jeremy. "Shall we then?" Without waiting for the group to answer, Olivia briskly turned and walked out the Perry Castle, bracing herself for the cold autumn air. Outside, Olivia stopped short when her eyes hit the behemoth of a vehicle waiting to escort them to the hospital. Lena and Millie were the next out, and their eyes too went wide with surprise. "Holy!" Lena sputtered, but was in such shock she was unable to finish. "What is this?" Millie walked forward to inspect the six-door SUV, already spouting out fumes in front of them. "Who are we, the president?" Jeremy walked up and opened the door for the girl, shrugging. "It's Carlton's. He said we could borrow it for the night, and it's better than having to wait for a car service." The girls all looked at each other skeptically. This wasn't exactly helping to keep their low profile. But Jeremy made a good point. It was here and ready to go, and who knows how long it would take to call for another car. After all, the ground alone boasted over 100 acres of land. They would just have to suck it up and take the eyesore of a car. After all, a bird in the hand is always worth more than two in the bush. Before they even arrived at the hospital, Olivia texted Steve to let them know about their arrival. She figured Wendy would still be too shaken up to answer her phone, so she was glad Steve had accompanied her this time. When they pulled up at the hospital entrance, Steve was already waiting outside for them. "Thanks for coming. Wendy will be really glad to see you." Steve greeted them as they all piled out of the giant SUV. "How is she doing?" Olivia made for the hospital entrance, not wanting to linger in the entryway, just in case anyone had attempted to follow them. It would be safer for them to be inside where there were too many witnesses to do anything. "She's holding up," Steve sighed, trying to keep up with Olivia's clip, even though she admittedly had no idea which direction she was meant to be going. "I think seeing Dusty shot like that really freaked her out, though." "Rightfully so," Millie chimed in, practically jogging behind the two. "After all, he's there to protect her. She must feel so helpless in this situation." Steve escorted them upstairs and down a set of winding hallways until they were finally outside of one of the hospital's VIP recovery rooms. Steve opened the door, letting the girls in first. As soon as Wendy saw Olivia's face, she jumped up from where she sat at Dusty's bedside. "Liv, you came!" She threw her arms around Olivia's neck. "Of course I did. We all did." Olivia pulled back from Wendy so that she may also greet Millie and Lena. "How are you doing?" Millie rushed forward to squeeze her friend. "I'm okay." Wendy looked over her shoulder at where Dusty lay asleep in the hospital bed, hooked up to a million beeping machines and IV drips. She winced as the memory of the doctor removing the bullet from Dusty's shoulder replayed in her mind. Olivia dipped into her friend's mind and saw that not only was Wendy being haunted by the events from the knife god competition, but it was bringing back visions from their terrible time at the noodle shop when Dusty was almost killed by an assassin. If Olivia hadn't intervened, Dusty could be dead right now. Olivia frowned. She hadn't realized how much PTSD her friend had been suffering from after that event. Poor Wendy, Olivia thought to herself. She really has endured so much. It's okay, we're all here now. You're safe. Olivia rubbed a hand against Wendy's back, trying to comfort the girl. Just then, Dusty stirred in his bed. His eyes flickered open, and he attempted a feeble smile at the group. Wendy quickly ran to his side, and Olivia followed. "Dusty, how are you doing?" Olivia asked, kneeling down so that he would not have to strain his neck to look up at her. "I've been better." Dusty let out a small laugh. "Doc says the bullet just missed the bone." "You've always been lucky." Olivia smiled at him. "I gotta stay alive if I'm gonna keep our promise." Dusty glanced over at Wendy. "Somebody's gotta make sure this one is safe." Olivia reached over and took Dusty's good hand in hers. "I appreciate you more than you know, Dusty. And don't think I've forgotten my end of the promise." She winked at Dusty and then stood. Steve, who had been trying not to eavesdrop, couldn't help but overhear and wonder about the promise made between Olivia and Dusty. Steve looked curiously between Olivia and Dusty. He had just heard them mention some mysterious promise, seemingly revolving around Wendy, and he couldn't help but wonder what vow it was exactly they had taken. He couldn't very well ask them, since he wasn't supposed to be listening in the first place, but his curiosity had definitely been piqued. What exactly was the relationship between Olivia and Dusty, and furthermore between Dusty and Wendy? He looked then to Wendy, who was staring at Dusty, anxiously chewing on her lip, a look of angst glued to her face. Dusty noticed this as well and motioned to Olivia with his chin to check on her friend. When Olivia saw Wendy, she wrinkled her brow in concern. She stood and addressed her friend. "Wendy, would you come with me to see if we can find a nurse to get some food for Dusty?" Olivia held out a hand to help Wendy up from where she kneeled next to Dusty's bed. Wendy looked at Olivia confused, then back to Dusty, who smiled at her reassuringly. "I guess so." Wendy tentatively took Olivia's hand and stood to join her friend. As they exited the hospital suite, Lena leaned over and whispered in Millie's ear, "You don't really think they're going to find food, do you?" Millie glanced at her two friends as they exited. "Doubtful, but whatever Olivia's got planned, I'm sure it's for Wendy's benefit." Millie and Lena watched as their friends exited the room. Outside in the hall, Olivia led Wendy to a quiet area where the two of them could be alone. Wendy looked around flustered. "Wait, I think the nurse's station is that way." Wendy turned to look in the direction of the nurse's station, but Olivia put her hands on Wendy's shoulders and guided her attention back. "Wendy, we're not really looking for food." Olivia spoke in a calm and soft voice. "I just wanted to check on you. I know you've been through a lot these past few days, and I want to make sure you're doing okay." "Sure, I'm not the one who got shot." Wendy tried to smile as if making a joke like this could erase the gravity of the situation. But her smile quickly faltered, and suddenly Wendy broke into tears. Olivia pulled her friend closer, holding her tightly as she sobbed into Olivia's shoulder. Shh, it's okay." Olivia stroked Wendy's hair, trying to calm her down slightly. "It's not okay. Dusty is laid up in bed there, and it's all my fault." Wendy completely fell apart. "This is the second time he almost died, and both times were because of me." Olivia pushed back and looked at her friend in shock. "Wendy, you don't really believe that, do you?" "Of course I do. Look at me. I'm no one. I'm just a scared little girl. I can't protect anyone, and everyone around me just ends up getting hurt." Olivia felt for her friend. She often felt that way herself. She thought back to all of the pain that Wendy had suffered because of her friendship with Olivia. Hell, if Wendy had never befriended her, she wouldn't have had to ask Dusty to protect her in the first place. But Olivia knew that feeling guilty wasn't going to help either of them. She brushed the hair that had fallen into Wendy's face out of her eyes and looked at her. Hey, none of that is true. You are so brave. I mean, moving to a different state, starting a brand new school, and applying to all those art programs? That all takes guts. Wendy sniffled and looked up at Olivia. Yeah? Yes. Olivia cocked her head sympathetically. Do you want to know what I think your only real problem is? What? Wendy's breath stuttered as her crying began to slow. Your problem is that you don't believe in yourself. Olivia stared into her friend's eyes now, as if trying to bore this truth into her brain. Look at Sven. He may be a Jorgensen, but his immediate family has fallen way down from where they once stood. But still, nobody would dare mess with him. Do you want to know why? Why? Wendy whispered. Because he's got guts. He believes in himself, and he puts all of his energy into supporting his own efforts. Now everyone knows not to mess with him. Olivia smiled at Wendy. You're like that too, you know. Wendy sniffled. Me? Olivia looked at her friend with genuine surprise. She definitely felt more confident in this life than she ever had before. But that was because of her powers and everything she already knew. She didn't think anyone else noticed this confidence. When we were surrounded today, Wendy shivered slightly at the memory. I was so scared. But then I saw your face through the crowd and I instantly felt better. Olivia couldn't believe it. She felt truly touched by her friend's words. My first thought was, Olivia's here. We're safe now. Wendy continued. I always know that nothing bad is going to happen as long as you're around. Olivia felt the tears welling up in her own eyes. Thanks, Wendy. She pulled her friend in for another hug, squeezing her extra tight this time. She was so glad in this life that she had decided to talk to Wendy that first day of school. One day, I hope you feel that way about yourself, because I know you're stronger than you think you are. Olivia spoke gently into Wendy's ear. After a long moment, the two girls separated. Wendy wiped off her eyes as she pulled away. I guess we should go back? Olivia smiled at Wendy. She knew the girl had a long way to go to build up her confidence, but she was sure that Wendy would not return to the States the same girl she left as. She knew Wendy would grow from this experience, and for that, she was grateful. Just as Olivia turned to leave, Wendy grabbed her wrist, pulling her friend back for a moment. Hey, one day, I'm going to be so brave, I'll be the one protecting you. I promise. Olivia squeezed Wendy's hand and smiled. I know you will. The two girls made their way back to Dusty's hospital room, still hand in hand. Inside the room, the group was reliving some of the lighter moments from their trip to Paris, in an attempt to make Dusty smile and to take his mind off his injuries for now. Lena was in the middle of acting out Royal Perry's first entrance to greet his esteemed guest. She was doing a very comical job at this, exaggerating his stance and how he gestured to himself with an extra flair, the way only one who is very into oneself might. When Wendy and Olivia re-entered, they found all of their friends in stitches, laughing at Lena's little performance. Don't make me laugh, Dusty wheezed from the bed, the widest grin he had mustered all day spread across his face. It hurts too much to laugh. Lena stopped what she was doing in order to spare Dusty's ribcage, then turned to Olivia and Wendy. Well, looks like you were all having fun while we were gone. Olivia smirked at her friends as they wound down the little party. These friends of yours are a hoot, Wendy. Dusty smiled from the bed, immediately assuaging Wendy's guilt. I'm glad they kept you entertained. Wendy walked back over to Dusty's side to check on him properly. Olivia turned to face the group. All right, everyone. I've already filled Millie and Lena in on the plan, but it's time the rest of you know too. We will be leaving tomorrow to fly back to New York. Frances and Jeremy's eyes widened in surprise, but they kept their mouths shut. They knew if Olivia was making this decision, There was a good reason behind it. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but it was important that no one caught on," Olivia continued. "As you all know, there are many people still in the Perry Manor who want to cause me harm, and you all by extension." Her eyes flitted over to where Dusty lay injured in bed. "I refuse to let that happen to anyone else. So there's a flight going out tomorrow early in the morning direct to New York. It's practically empty, so we'll buy our tickets at the airport when we arrive. Please keep the reservations you already had. Wait until we are in the air to cancel your tickets. We don't want to do anything that might allow anyone to catch on to our plan. Are we all in agreement with this?" Olivia looked around at her friends, the slightest bit of uneasiness building in her stomach. She realized this was a lot to ask of them, but it was for their safety as much as her own. Francis stood first. "Of course we're in agreement. We're always with you, Liv." He glanced briefly in Lena's direction, hoping this act of courage and loyalty would impress her. "Yeah, who cares about the tickets? My family's got a ridiculous amount of miles anyways. Somebody should put them to use." Jeremy winked at Olivia, and she smiled, then quickly averted her eyes. Steve Shook was the last to answer. He looked incredibly conflicted, his eyes flitting between his friends and Wendy. Sensing his friend's struggle, Francis placed a hand on Steve's arm. "Steve, it's time to go back." Steve Shook nodded solemnly. "Okay, I'm in. When do we leave?" Olivia glanced at the clock on the wall of the hospital room. It was already so late, and she hadn't given her friends any time to prepare. "We should probably go now." She turned to Wendy and Dusty. "Will you two be all right?" "We'll be just fine. Don't you worry about a thing." Dusty grabbed Wendy's hand and smiled at Olivia, silently thanking her for everything, a look she gladly returned. The friends said their teary goodbyes, unsure of when they would see Wendy again. "Promise we'll FaceTime when we get back home," Millie pleaded. Wendy held out her pinky finger in response. "I pinky promise." Finally, it was Steve's turn to say goodbye. He knew he'd already pushed things with Wendy too far and didn't want to leave on a sour note. "Wendy, it was good to see you." He nodded his head, not wanting to seem too informal with her. "You too." She smiled at him, then waved to the rest of her friends as they piled out of the hospital room. As the group made their way down the hall of the hospital, Francis and Jeremy comforted Steve. "You'll meet another girl, man," Francis assured him. "You just need to let enough time pass." Suddenly, they all heard a voice from the direction they'd just come. "Wait!" The entire friend group turned and saw Wendy, standing there in the doorway of Dusty's room. "Steve, Her voice faltered momentarily as her nerves began to take over. Seeing this, Olivia gathered the friends. "Come on, guys, let's head out." She turned to Steve. "We'll meet you out front." As Olivia led the group away, Steve turned and walked towards Wendy hesitantly. I wanted to say thanks for all your help with Dusty." Wendy lowered her eyes bashfully. "It was nothing, really." Steve ran his hand through his hair, fidgeting. "Well, it meant a lot to me." Wendy looked into Steve's eyes, and he felt his breath catch. It took all of his willpower not to reach out and take her hands into his. He began, then looked down, shaking his head slightly. "You're welcome." He smiled at Wendy, then turned and walked off to join his friends. "Next time," Steve thought to himself, "next time I see her, I'll tell her that I love her." The rest of the way back to the Perry Manor, Steve Shook sat in complete silence, watching the lights of Paris whisk by through the window of the giant black SUV. No one else said much either. They wanted to give their friend time to reminisce about Wendy and think of his lost love. On top of that, everyone was busy thinking about everything they needed to get done before tomorrow's surprise flight back to New York. Once they were just about to approach the large wrought-iron gate to the Perry property, Olivia startled everyone out of their stupor. "Stop the car!" she shouted, causing the driver to screech to a halt. Olivia knew there were cameras all over the Perry estate. and she wanted to get this out of the way before they entered the property, just in case anyone happened to be watching out for them. Olivia scooted her way to the front seat of the SUV, leaning through the partition that separated the driver from the passengers. I just want to get our story straight. If anyone asks, you took us into the city for some last-minute shopping. There was no hospital, and anything you may have heard in this car tonight is strictly private. Are we clear? Oui, madame. The driver nodded, but kept his eyes on the road. His experience told him that although the person giving him orders was only a child, she would probably find a way to make him pay if he went against her. Very good. Olivia reached into her purse and pulled out a 500 € bill, then carefully slipped it to the driver, who took it and stuffed it into his jacket pocket, completely expressionless. You may continue. Olivia sat back in her seat as the driver pulled the car forward through the gate to the Perry estate. You all got that too? Olivia turned to face her friends. We can't let anyone know where we were tonight, all right? They all nodded along. They already knew there were very few people among the guests of the Knife God competition that could be trusted. They weren't going to give away any more information that was necessary. Back in the hospital, Wendy sat at Dusty's side, carefully cutting his dinner of bland chicken and potatoes into bite-sized pieces. After she had returned with Olivia empty-handed, she felt so bad she rushed back out to find the nurse she could order to get Dusty some food. Even though he insisted he hadn't been hungry in the first place, Wendy wanted to make sure he ate, so that he could regain his strength. Okay, that should be easy to chew. Wendy sat back, looking at her work on the chicken. She then looked at Dusty, his shoulder all bandaged, and wrinkled her brow. Do you want me to feed you? I really don't mind. Wendy leaned forward to grab the fork, but Dusty held up his good hand to stop her. I'm really okay, Wendy, thank you. I just want to be helpful. Wendy smiled sadly and looked down at her lap. Dusty reached out and took her hand in his. Wendy, you've been more help than I could have ever imagined. He squeezed her hand for emphasis. But I'm worried about you. I need you to rest. You've also been through a lot. He hesitated a moment. I know that what happened during the competition really frightened you. Wendy looked up at Dusty, her eyes clear and bright. It's okay. I talked to Olivia about it, and she helped me through it. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Dusty smiled at her, then winced slightly at the pain in his shoulder. Dusty, when we're back and you're all healed and all, would you do me a favor? Wendy hesitated to ask. Anything for you, Dusty assured her. I want to learn how to shoot, like with a gun. Dusty tried to keep a straight face with the girl. He could see how serious she was about this. Now, what would you want to learn a thing like that for? Wendy's request took him by surprise. Dusty could of course teach her, easily, not only how to use a rifle, but how to be a sharpshooter if she put enough effort. But it just didn't seem like the Wendy he knew. Seeing this thought process on his face, Wendy quickly spoke up. I don't plan on doing anything crazy with it. I want to know how to protect myself, and other people if I should need to. Even though Wendy was trying to remember Olivia's words from earlier, she was still struggling not to look back at what happened and feel guilty for Dusty. As soon as we get back, I'll teach you how to shoot. Dusty smiled up at Wendy, and she met him with the same warm look in return. Completely unbeknownst to Wendy and Dusty, just down the hall in another VIP recovery suite at the same hospital, Carolina Crawford lay in her own hospital bed, scowling at the nurses who tended to her. Although she had had all of the poison removed from her body days ago, she was still in a very weak state, and nothing pissed Carolina off more than weakness. Mason had been in to visit her every day since the incident, but she was starting to weigh on his patience. I know it was Olivia who did this. I have Nanny investigating back at the Perry Manor, and I'm certain she'll find some kind of evidence tying what happened to me back to Olivia. Carolina ranted from her bed. Uh-huh. Mason rolled his eyes as he casually flipped through a magazine left in the room for patients and guests. Carolina had been repeating herself over and over these past few days, and Mason was beginning to grow sick of it. "You don't even care about me!" Carolina shrieked, swatting away a nurse who attempted to fluff the pillows that were stacked behind Carolina to prop her up in the bed. "Your little sister is being targeted by a psychopath, and all you can do is read magazines and blow me off?" Mason closed the magazine and sighed. "Carolina, I told you. You need to rest now. We can talk about this further when we get home. If there is any indication of foul play on Olivia Johnson's part, we can discuss it then." If? Carolina was squawking like a parrot, and it was giving Mason a headache. He rubbed his temples gingerly as she continued. "You don't even believe me, do you? You think I'm the crazy one." The nurses who had been in the room tidying and helping out began to trickle out of the room. All week they had taken turns caring for Carolina, and all of them agreed they liked her better when she was comatose. "Carolina, I'm tired of having this argument with you." Mason stood from his seat and faced his sister. "You're clearly well enough to scream at me, so I'm sure they'll be releasing you soon. But in the meantime, I really think you need to rest. You were almost dead." Mason had to stop himself from imagining that scenario and smiling. "Just leave me. I don't even want you here. Get out." Carolina threw a pillow at her brother, missing him by about a yard. He looked at the pillow, lying there on the floor, then back up at Carolina, who was now pretending to cry as she covered her eyes with her hands. "Okay, then, I'm going to head out." Mason grabbed his coat from the back of the chair he'd been sitting in. "Madeline should be by in an hour to keep you company." "Good riddance," Carolina sobbed through her hands. Mason clicked his tongue at his petulant sister, then turned to leave the room. As soon as he closed the door behind him, Mason heard a blood-curdling screech from inside. He winced at the noise. He was no stranger to Carolina's tantrums, but they were getting to be out of control for her age. He smiled at the nurses and gave them a small wave as if to apologize for his difficult sister. He walked down the hall toward the elevator. Just as he was about to press the button, his phone rang. When he saw the number on the screen, his heart stopped. He looked around, checking there was no one spying on him, then slipped into the nearby stairwell to take the call. "Hello?" Mason spoke quietly into the receiver. "I have the information you requested, sir," a voice answered. Mason's heart began to race. "Yes?" "The person you asked me to look into. Her name is Millie Brown, 17 years old and a current senior at the Marshall Prep School in New York City. She is the legal daughter of the principal of the school, Mr. Yan." At this, Mason's heart sank. This was not the news he had been expecting. But before he could thank the man on the other end, the voice continued. "She was adopted at age 4 through a private adoption agency." Now Mason's heart began to pick up again. It seems the girl was suffering from some sort of amnesia when she was brought into the police station. Eventually, she was given to the agency when no one came forward for the child. Nothing is known about the first 4 years of her life. Mason waited for the man to continue, but it seemed he had reached the end of his spiel. "Continue investigating this, Millie Brown," Mason demanded. "But sir, I found all there is." The man began to argue, but Mason quickly cut him off. "I said, continue investigating her." With that, Mason hung up the call, quickly dialing another number and holding the phone up to his ear. After a painstakingly long amount of time, the other end picked up. "Grandfather? It's Mason." Mason chewed his lip anxiously while he waited to tell his grandfather the news. "I think I found her. Cousin Mariana. I think she's here in Paris with us." Mason's smile faded as he listened to the older man on the other end. "Well, no, I'm not 100%. Mason lowered his head as his grandfather chastised him through the phone. "Yes, sir, of course." Mason muttered into the phone, feeling utterly deflated at this point. "I'll continue to investigate and let you know when I have more solid information." His grandfather hung up immediately without so much as a goodbye. Mason stood there for a moment, completely dejected, then took a deep breath and made his way back out into the hall. He pressed the elevator button and waited only a few moments before the door to the elevator opened. As he was stepping onto the elevator, a man dressed in all black, with sunglasses and a baseball cap, pushed past him, practically knocking Mason to his feet. "Hey, watch it, pal!" Mason shouted after the man. "Sorry," the man responded casually over his shoulder, never stopping to properly acknowledge the young man he had just bumped into. "Jerk," Mason huffed as he stepped onto the elevator. The man in all black swiftly made his way down the hall, stopping in front of one of the private VIP suites. He looked over his shoulder quickly before knocking softly at the door. "Get in here!" a voice yelled from the other side. The man stepped into the room, tentatively, making his way to the foot of the bed. "Sir, I just came to confirm the plan." In the bed, completely laid up and looking especially pitiful, was Jason Goodwin. "And you're scheduled to execute the plan the day after tomorrow?" "Correct. We pounce right as Miss Johnson and her crew are set to leave the Perry estate," the man confirmed with the boy. Jason smiled wickedly as he imagined the pain that was about to be inflicted on Olivia. Good. That imbecile had the nerve to sick one of her cronies on me, and for that she deserves to die. Olivia Johnson will never make it out of Paris alive. Back at the Perry mansion, Olivia sent Lena and Millie back to their room to start packing, so that they might be done in time to get some rest before their big day of travel tomorrow. "But what about you, Liv?" Lena looked to her friend. "You also need your rest. This week has been hectic." "I'll be back to the room soon. There's just one thing I have to do before I leave." Olivia smiled at her friends, hoping she could appear calm and control enough that they wouldn't worry about her, although she knew they often did anyway. "We can get started unpacking your things too," Millie offered. "That way, when you get back to your room, you can just go straight to sleep." "Thanks, Millie." Olivia gave her friends a hug, then sent them off up the stairs towards their room, before making her way in the opposite direction. Olivia made her way through the winding corridors of the Perry mansion until she was standing in front of an ornately carved mahogany door. She knocked quietly on the door, hoping that its inhabitant was still awake. "Come in," Chef Theodore's voice lilted from the other side. Olivia stepped in and found Chef Theodore sitting in an armchair in his nightclothes, complete with silk pajamas, just peeking out from a heavy velvet robe, tied with a golden sash and matching slippers. Olivia stifled a laugh at the old-fashioned man. He wore more clothes to bed than most people do during the day. He had been reading a book in the dim light of the room, but closed it immediately when he saw who had entered. "Ah, I was hoping it might be you. Please, come in. Take a seat." Olivia walked over and sat on the small ottoman in front of Chef Theodore. "I'm sorry to disturb you so late at night, Chef." "Nonsense." Chef Theodore waved a hand, dismissing Olivia's apology. "I'm an old man with insomnia. You're disturbing nothing." "Well, I just returned from the hospital and I wanted to check in." Olivia knew she could trust him with this information, and yet she hesitated to tell Chef Theodore she was leaving in the morning. "Visiting the Chang girl, I presume?" Chef Theodore cocked an eyebrow questioningly. Olivia nodded in return. "You know, I saw what happened during the competition." Olivia looked at Chef Theodore now, surprised. She hadn't seen him until the very end, and assumed he had remained in the grand ballroom with Royal Perry and Carlton, waiting for the victors to return. "Royal took me up to his special viewing room. He really does have every corner of the place under surveillance." Chef Theodore lowered his voice then, leaning forward. "He promised the bedrooms were camera-free, but knowing him, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a lie, too." Olivia searched the room quickly with her eyes. Between all the books and dark antiques, it would be impossible to find a camera hidden in this room. Thank goodness she was leaving tomorrow. That Jason Goodwin acted completely out of hand. Very unsportsmanlike. Chef Theodore tutted. He really embarrassed the Goodwin family's reputation by doing such a thing. Olivia looked down, wringing her hands in her lap. Do you think I was wrong for how I responded? Chef Theodore studied her for a moment. Do you think you were wrong? I don't know. Olivia sighed. Yes, maybe, but also, I know I'd do it again in the same situation. I do appreciate your moxie. Chef Theodore let out a hearty laugh. I wouldn't worry about it for too long. That Sven has quite the trigger-happy finger. Something tells me if you hadn't given him the order, he would have done it himself eventually. You don't think I'll get in trouble, do you? Olivia hadn't really considered this before, but thinking back now on how many witnesses there were, not to mention that apparently the entire incident was caught on tape, she couldn't help but worry slightly. No, Royal does not like scandal. Well, at least when it pertains to him or his household. He smiled reassuringly at Olivia. He'll make sure none of this leaks out to the public. Olivia let out a deep breath through her nose. She felt a weight lift off of her and was suddenly very glad she had decided to visit Chef Theodore before leaving. Chef Theodore reached over to a small candy dish on the table next to him and produced 2 peppermints. He offered one to Olivia before popping the other into his own mouth. Olivia accepted the mint to be polite, unwrapping it and placing it on her tongue, despite the fact that she did not enjoy mint-flavored anything. May I ask you something a bit personal? Chef Theodore watched Olivia now as if he was trying to read her thoughts. I guess so, Olivia swallowed, but no promises I'll answer. Chef Theodore chuckled, before adopting a more serious face. I saw you with that Jarbaldi boy. The two of you seem to know each other quite well. Olivia felt her face go hot. She had worried people would read more into their relationship than was true after she had chosen him as her partner for the Knife God competition. Is there something going on there? Chef Theodore pressed as politely as possible. No, definitely not. Olivia quickly shook her head. Jeremy's just, well, he's my friend. Chef Theodore sat back in his seat, folding his hands and resting them atop his protruding belly. And does he know that? Olivia shook her head again, as if the mere suggestion that Jeremy might feel more was preposterous. Jeremy's like a brother to me, and I'm like a sister to him. I know he feels the same way. Even now, as the words tumbled out of her mouth, Olivia was suddenly having trouble believing that they were true. Very well, then. Chef Theodore couldn't help but feel bad for Jeremy. Olivia was such a special girl. He didn't blame the boy for becoming infatuated. But I always think it's best to say these things out loud. After all, you want to make sure that everyone around you understands your thoughts and feelings as clearly as you do. Otherwise, why were we given the gift of speech? Olivia nodded as she let that sink in. Perhaps it was a good idea to check in with Jeremy. Make sure he hadn't gotten the wrong idea this whole time. While we're on the subject of boys, I want to say something about my dear grandnephew. At the mere mention of Chris Jones, Olivia felt her stomach bottom out, as if she were on a roller coaster. I know he's not an easy person to get along with. Olivia looked down at her hands. She couldn't disagree with Chef Theodore on this point, but she also felt it would be rude to agree with him outright. I see how patient you are with him, and I want to thank you. Chef Theodore spoke softly. Not many women would have the emotional intelligence needed to deal with someone so stubborn and immature. Chef Theodore sighed, then reached for another peppermint, gesturing to offer Olivia another, but she shook her head no. It's not his fault, you know, Chef Theodore continued, popping the candy into his mouth. He's a sweet boy, but he's put up too many walls for someone his age. I blame his father. Olivia perked up slightly. She knew a bit about Chris's past, but she always received information from him in drips and drabs. She was desperate for more insight into the boy. His father left him alone far too much, especially after his mother died. Chef Theodore hissed at the memory. He relied on nannies to raise Chris. That kind of thing is never good for a boy. Olivia's heart hurt thinking of little Chris, not receiving the love he so desperately wanted from his dad. She felt suddenly very grateful for her own childhood, although they didn't have much money, and she didn't know her own father for the first years of her life. Olivia's mother had always filled their home with love. As a child, she never felt neglected or unloved. She knew that no amount of money could make up for that feeling. Chef Theodore reached out and took Olivia's hands in his. Please take care of Chris. He needs someone like you in his life. Olivia looked into the old man's eyes. She thought of everything he had done for her, and she knew, no matter what happened between her and Chris in the future, that she would do this for him. I promise. Chef Theodore smiled and released her hands, resting back in his seat. Olivia hesitated a moment as she struggled with another decision. But ultimately, she decided she could trust Chef Theodore with anything. Chef Theodore? Olivia cleared her throat. I'm leaving tomorrow, for New York. My friends are coming with me. We don't want anyone to know just in case, well, you know. It was too hard to admit to herself that there were people here who would actually love to see her dead. Would you like to join us? Olivia looked up at the old man. He smiled down at her. That's very clever of you to leave before your scheduled departure, and I appreciate you thinking of me, but I think I'll stay here. After all, someone has to make sure Royal properly forges your knife. He winked at Olivia in a grandfatherly way, and she smiled. I should let you get sleep. Olivia stood. Thank you for everything. It was a pleasure and an honor. Chef Theodore tipped an imaginary hat to Olivia before sending her on her way. Olivia walked through the dark and quiet hallways of the Perry Manor, trying her best not to get lost in the twisting and winding turns. The whole time she was dealing with an inner battle. She knew she should return to her room. Millie and Lena had probably finished packing their own things by now and would be moving on to hers. She really ought to get back and help them. Besides, it was late now, and they planned to leave first thing in the morning before everyone else was up. Olivia should at least try to get some sleep so that she can be alert tomorrow. Then again, it was a long flight back to New York, and she could always just sleep on the plane. Suddenly, before she could stop herself, Olivia found herself right outside Chris Jones' bedroom door. She cursed herself for being there, but ultimately, she knew as soon as she left Chef Theodore's room that she was headed to see Chris. She raised her hand to knock on the door, hesitating momentarily when a voice interrupted her. Olivia? She yelped, spinning around to face the mystery voice. Jeremy stood there blinking in the dark hallway. Jeremy? She squinted at him. What are you doing out here? I'm having trouble sleeping. Jeremy ran his hands through his hair nervously. I thought walking a little might help. He looked up at the door in front of Olivia, seeming to put together whose room it was Olivia was about to knock on. What are you doing? I just went to see Chef Theodore to say goodbye, and I was making my way back to my room. Olivia was grateful that once again the Perry Manor was too dark for Jeremy to see how much she was blushing right now. Jeremy raised an eyebrow at Olivia. Isn't your room a floor above? Olivia didn't know what to say. She'd obviously been caught sneaking into Chris's room. But so what? It was none of Jeremy's business anyway. She opened her mouth to say something, but Jeremy spoke first. Olivia, I think I have to tell you something. Jeremy hesitated, or rather ask you something. Olivia's heart raced. Please, please don't do this, Jeremy. She thought to herself, not now. Jeremy took a step closer. If I were to tell you I liked you, as in more than just a friend, would you agree to be with me? Olivia and Jeremy stood face to face. He had just told her how he really felt about her and was waiting for her response. Looking into Jeremy's hopeful eyes, Olivia's mind immediately flashed back to Chris's drunk, desperate begging for words of romantic reassurance and certainty. By contrast, Jeremy seemed so calm and confident. He had made his feelings clear but was not pressuring her. He was simply waiting with curiosity to hear what she said. Olivia took a deep breath. "I don't feel that way about you, Jeremy. I'm so sorry. I don't want to hurt you." "No apology necessary," Jeremy said with a wave of his hand. He did look disappointed, but what he said sounded sincere. "I'm bummed, obviously, but I just wanted to put that out there in case you felt the same way. I still love you as a friend." Olivia smiled, touched and grateful. She still loved him as a friend and pseudo-brother too, but his confidence at this moment was honestly pretty attractive. "Is it okay if I hug you?" she asked. "Of course." He held out his arms. As she hugged him, he closed his eyes, trying not to breathe in the smell of her hair or enjoy the feeling of her body pressed against his. The smell of her triggered a vivid sense of memory. His mind transported him back to a class he had with her at Marshall in New York when they first met. It was a hot, humid afternoon and the sun was warm. Olivia sat between him and the window, glowing in the sunlight, and occasionally a breeze would blow the scent of her hair right to him. He was lost in it. Shoot, how long have I been hugging her? He worried internally. Am I making it weird? She still seems to be hugging me too. At that moment, the door beside them opened with a creak and they jumped apart, startled. However, it was too late. The stunned person inside the room had seen them already. Taking in the scene was a dumbstruck, hungover Chris Jones. Chris exhaled with a huff in disbelief. His thoughts were whirling in a growing anger. What a fantastic coincidence. Right after she reassures me that she only sees him like a brother, they're feeling each other up in the hallway alone outside my room. Wonderful, priceless, great move, Olivia. His head was pounding. His neck, temples, and sinuses felt like they were filled with leaden hot sauce. He was dizzy. Wine hangovers are truly one of the worst kinds. I'm never drinking again. Olivia felt caught in such an awkward moment. A romantic rejection, followed by her jealous, undefined romantic interest walking in on the exact scenario he feared. She wanted to say something to break the tension, but everything that came to mind, she imagined, would only make things worse. Jeremy turned to Olivia. I'll head back to my room. He waved to Chris, who just stared back at Jeremy and didn't respond, and turned on his heel to leave them. Olivia faced Chris, filled with dread at whatever was going to happen. A wave of awkwardness and embarrassment crashed over her as she remembered all the things he did and said the last time she saw him. Olivia wondered to herself, and does he even remember anything that happened? If he does remember, this is still super awkward. But if he doesn't remember, then I'm still mad at him for something he doesn't remember. Olivia and Chris stared at each other. The air was thick and impossibly quiet, like the weight of their awkward moment was such a force of physics that it created a vacuum from which no sound could escape. Olivia weighed the pros and cons of trying to demand an apology, or some level of making things right from Chris. She debated in her head, but how realistic is it of me to expect him to actually do that? Is Chris actually capable of apologizing the right way and making me feel better in this situation? I should probably just be polite and try to get past it. Olivia opened her mouth to speak when Chris finally jumped in first. He shook his head. I can't believe you. Right after you promised me he was just a brother? This is a real scumbag move, Olivia. His eyes were cold. We weren't. Olivia tried to speak, but instead of letting Olivia make any sort of response, Chris shut the door to his room and locked it. Olivia could not believe he did that, or that was what he had to say. After she was so understanding of him being messy, rude, and out of control, and even took care of his drunk, wine-covered self in bed, he would not offer her the benefit of the doubt or listen to her explanation. Anger rushed into her head and her scalp prickled. How dare he? She fumed internally. Do I even need someone in my life who's this insecure, jealous, and controlling? How unattractive. Olivia regretted trying to spare Chris's feelings during their earlier fight, or at that moment. He didn't deserve it. She stormed off. On the other side of the door, after Chris shut it, he leaned against it, cursing the dull, throbbing pain in his head. But the pain of his hangover was somehow intensified by the pain he felt from that exchange with Olivia. His chest was tight. Every breath felt like it hurt. He only remembered part of the night. He knew that he argued with her. He knew she promised him she didn't see Jeremy in a romantic light. What a liar. Chris felt a nagging sense of dread pull at his insides. He had said something bad to Olivia, but he couldn't yet remember what it was. He was just left with the feeling that he was very mad at her, and she was mad at him too. But clearly, after this lie about her relationship with Jeremy, it couldn't have been his fault. How could she have a moment like that with Jeremy right in front of his room? Did Olivia just think Chris wasn't sincere enough when he told her how he felt? Did it not feel genuine? Was his love not clear yet? He couldn't see how that was true, but for her to act that way, it must be. Chris wanted something, anything that would make him feel better. He staggered to a cabinet in his room. Inside, a whole new bottle of wine was untouched. He knew Hair of the Dog was far from a real hangover cure, and would actually make him feel worse in the long run. But for the short term, he was desperate for another glass to dull his physical and emotional pain. He popped the bottle open, picked up his dirty glass from earlier, and poured a generous amount of ruby liquid into it. He was about to drink it when, touching the glass to his lips, he stopped. Would it really be a good idea to drink more at this moment? He still had to go to the airport at dawn and protect Olivia from whatever came their way. Thinking of this duty was the only thing that compelled him to put down his wine glass. I just need to forget about it, he thought. Just get through the rest of Paris and make sure she comes home safe. Even if she did act callous and villainous, even if she lied to me about Jeremy, I am obligated to protect her, and that's all I know for sure right now. Chris stumbled to the bathroom empty-handed. He opened the shower door and slowly took off his clothes, each piece requiring a Herculean effort of mental planning and physical exertion. Shirt, pants, sock. Damn, still one whole other sock. Doing literally anything felt so difficult, and still he felt that creeping sense of guilt climb up into his head. Had he said something terrible to Olivia before? If he had, what on earth was it? Chris kept the shower water cold to try to shock his groggy, poisoned system into functioning. He stepped under the shower water, gasping at the sharp chill, then rubbing the water into his hair, over his arms, and furiously into his hands. He felt like his thoughts were flowing a little more normally instead of the hot, sticky hangover soup his brain had been. As the shower washed off his rancid alcohol sweat, Chris's jaw suddenly dropped. He remembered what he said to Olivia. He watched the words, "You're selfish and unlovable, and I don't know why I bothered trying to be with someone who can't see beyond their own reflection," come out of his own mouth, slurring, angry. Chris felt dizzy and couldn't see clearly. No, he thought. No, I didn't. There's no way I said that to her. Olivia! He got out of the shower. He turned to the mirror and saw his puffy face, the bags under his eyes. He remembered Olivia saying, "You're calling me selfish? Look at you. So wrapped up in your own pride that you can't even accept help without making it a battle of egos." His face fell. But then he remembered another thing that made him sink to the floor. After he had called her selfish and unlovable, he saw her face, her hurt eyes. Did she believe him? Oh no. She had responded. "You don't mean that, Chris." He put his hand to his mouth. He had responded. "I mean every word." Chris couldn't remember what happened after that. Did it get better? How stupid am I? He thought angrily to himself. Why would I assume that it would get better from there? Or that drunk version of myself was even capable of fixing what I'd just done. I certainly didn't want to at the time. I was way too mad. I never should have let her see me that way. Chris ran his hands through his wet hair, wishing he could wring out his regrets and stupid decisions from the night before. Chef Theodore came into Chris's mind, telling Chris that very few girls can become the one that got away. Damn it. Chris had that feeling wash over him and closed his eyes. Had he already pushed Olivia away too forcefully? Was this unfixable? Had he messed it up forever? He didn't think he could bear the idea of his romance with Olivia freezing where it was, never progressing, and both of them moving on to other people someday. Chris wrapped a robe around himself and hurried to the door, hoping that, for some reason, Olivia was still out in the hallway. He unlocked the door and flung it open, rushing outside. But nobody was there. It was an empty hallway. The next morning before dawn, Olivia and her friends all left the Perry estate together. Olivia's stomach was in knots. She had woken up before her alarm that morning and realized with a gut punch that she would have to see Chris that morning. She dreaded the moment she would see him and decided she wouldn't say a single word to him if she could get away with it. In his room, Chris was still overcome with guilt. He wanted to apologize, but had messed up so badly that he couldn't even imagine where to start. He was still so miserable at the thought that he was capable of saying those things to Olivia. Why would she listen to him now when he tried to make things right? If he were in her position, he certainly wouldn't. On the uneventful journey to the airport, Olivia successfully avoided Chris until she and her friends were all stepping out of the 2 cars they had taken to the tarmac. The chilly wind bit into them as Olivia gratefully said goodbye to Paris and its current weather. She brushed some hair back that had blown in her face and realized she was face to face with Chris. He looked miserable, she noted with some satisfaction. Good. He also looked apologetic, which was confusing, but certainly not the same as making a real apology. She turned away from him with a huff, and all of her friends standing around them noticed the tension. Just over 8 hours later, Olivia was so grateful to land in her boring, unexotic American home. She couldn't wait to get back to her own bed. On the way out of the airport, a tabloid on a rack caught her eye. The cover featured pictures of her dad and Rachel. The story headline read, "Businessman's tumultuous divorce, money, fear, fire." The sight of that really brought Olivia back down to earth. She had real problems to worry about here in New York. I don't have time to worry about Chris Jones, Olivia thought, hoping that was actually true. Olivia's relief at coming home to New York City didn't last long. After seeing a tabloid at the airport with her father's divorce splayed over the cover, Olivia decided she should go straight to the Confluence Technology offices to see her dad and get the real story about what happened with Rachel and Monica. Everything she knew was through many degrees of rumors and an intercontinental game of telephone. Olivia took a car to Confluence and stepped out on the sidewalk to find a total media circus. News vans and many other waiting vehicles surrounded the plaza outside their building. A crowd roiled in front of the office made up of reporters, influencers recording videos, and passers-by turned into looky-loos. Rachel and Monica did this on purpose, Olivia thought bitterly. And you know what? This was surprisingly well executed for them. I'm sure this is exactly the mess they wanted to cause. Dad must be so upset. Olivia realized that she should check on whether her dad was even in the office or in the middle of something before she fought through the crowd to get a more truthful account of what happened. She decided to duck away behind a building. She made a phone call. "Hello, miss," someone answered. "Ansel, where's my dad?" Olivia asked. Ansel Parr seemed to be looking around him to check on the answer. "He is here in the Confluence office. He's in a meeting. I need to speak to him. How much longer will he be?" Olivia pressed. Many floors above Olivia, Ansel tried to assess the nonverbal cues of a meeting between Michael and other business people through the conference room's glass walls. "I think it will be much longer, unfortunately. Is there something urgent you need?" "It's fine," Olivia said. "I can wait, but I want to speak with him as soon as I can. Ansel, will you tell me about what's happened with Rachel and Monica and the fire the last few days? If I can't hear it from him, I need to hear it from someone close who I can trust. I trust you." Ansel sighed. "So you did already hear about it," he said grimly. He originally had hoped that being the whole Atlantic Ocean away had shielded Olivia from this horrible news. Though Olivia was so successful and wise in her own right, she was still a child. What horrible things to hear about one of your parents. Rumors about it did make it to Paris. Then I saw news stories online. When I got off the plane, I saw it on a magazine cover at the airport. Olivia explained. "It seems like everybody knows, but that's why I want to hear about it from you." Ansel lightly cleared his throat, trying to speak delicately. "A long time ago, Mr. Johnson asked me to deal with the matter of his divorce. But Miss Johnson, Rachel, had always been unwilling. We have spent a long time trying to get her to cooperate. She dragged her feet, agreeing to mediation, then breaking it off or not showing up, or not providing what the mediator asked her to. Since they couldn't mediate, Mr. Johnson had to take her to court to get the divorce proceedings moving. The court case was due to finally start 2 days ago. The day before the court, Miss Johnson, she, Rachel, and her daughter were trapped in their home when a different part of the building caught on fire. They suffered from poisoning due to smoke inhalation and have been in the hospital." "Grandpa Jack's mansion caught fire?" Olivia probed. "Part of it. Most of the rooms are fine, but a small section was destroyed, including your old room." Olivia took all of this in. That's very odd. I have heard she's also saying that the fire was caused by one of your malfunctioning electronics that was left behind at the Johnson Manor," Ansel added uncomfortably. "No way." Olivia felt she had underestimated Rachel's capacity for underhanded trickery and deceit. "How is my mother?" she asked. "Well," Ansel hesitated, "she is not doing very well." Olivia's eyes darkened. She knew that Rachel must have expected Victoria to have a difficult time handling this event. "Another thing is," Ansel spoke gently, sighing, "I truly hate to bring work matters into this conversation while such heavy things are occurring in your family, but it is somewhat urgent. Our game production has reached the online beta testing phase, and we are currently running into many strange online attacks. Production on the game is almost completely stalled. This was done by my grandfather Jack, I'm sure of it. This says him all over, it has to be," Olivia said, immediately exasperated. Jack Johnson couldn't sit still any longer. He wanted to completely destroy Confluence Technology and cut off any options Michael had so that he would return to the Johnson family business obedient and broken. Then Jack could finally just treat Michael as a puppet that he and Bruno could use as they pleased. "He's ruthless." Olivia shook her head. "We do not have clear evidence at this time." Ansel chose his words carefully. "Miss Johnson, what do you plan to do?" "Where is Victoria now?" Olivia asked. "Is she at Confluence?" "No, she took a personal day today and did not come in at all." "That makes sense." Olivia pinched the bridge of her nose, looking at the swirling crowd spilling out of the plaza. Olivia felt like she had to give Rachel credit where it was due. Rachel had done an uncharacteristically good job of causing a mess, making Olivia look bad, and casting herself as a hapless victim. Jack Johnson had done a good job as well, cyber-attacking Michael and Olivia's game without leaving any damning evidence. Olivia and Ansel said goodbye, and Ansel promising to get Olivia in touch with her father when he could. Instead of walking farther into the crowd, Olivia walked back out towards the street and up to a waiting taxi. She got in and said, "City Hospital, please," to the waiting driver who nodded. At that hospital, in an exclusive high-rise room on the top floor of the most prominent New York City hospital, Rachel was lying on her hospital bed with a pale, gaunt face. Her eyes were full of hatred for the person standing before her. "You have a lot of nerve coming here," she spat. Victoria lowered her head, putting a fruit basket in her hands to the side. "You're a person. This is a terrible moment and you didn't deserve what happened to you. I wanted to bring in Olive Branch." Rachel laughed, cackling like a witch. "Victoria, Michael isn't here. You don't need to lie to me. I know that's obviously not true." Victoria shook her head at a loss. "Well, I tried, Rachel. Get well soon." "You and your conniving daughter want to just waltz in here and then back out again? Come and go from our lives as you wish." Rachel folded her arms with a smirk. "Do you think I'm stupid?" "Rachel, we've known each other since we were kids. If you are thinking something you aren't saying about me, just get it out in the open. I'm not some plotting enemy of yours. I'm just a person trying to bring you a fruit basket because you're in the hospital." Although Victoria now lived away from Michael, they still kept in touch and had meals together. She liked that, especially for Olivia's sake. From the times they caught up, Victoria knew that Michael wanted to divorce Rachel, but certainly did not believe any of the rumors that he had been the one to set the fire to harm Rachel and Monica on purpose. He would never. She just saw this as a terrible accident, which was the kind of moment where people put aside their differences and stick up for one another. At least that was what Victoria believed. "You're full of it," Rachel said simply. "I know this nice person thing is all an act. I see it in your daughter, and I know where she gets it from." "Leave Olivia out of it," Victoria insisted firmly. "You have a problem with me. Don't make her suffer too. I can take whatever you want to throw my way. I have a lot of cheeks to turn because I don't think us fighting each other does anybody any good. But once you're attacking Olivia, I cannot tolerate that." "You think so highly of yourself, don't you?" Rachel hissed with a poisonous smile. "Do you think you're the matriarch of the Johnson family? The eldest daughter of the Park family? That's certainly how you act, but Victoria, you seem to have forgotten. You are nothing. The Park family is bankrupt and all your family members are dead or in hiding. You have nothing, not even a husband. Olivia's electronics started the fire, so she's toast too. What right do you have to come in here and tell me what to do?" Victoria shook her head, still trying not to respond, trying not to get down in the mud with Rachel. Rachel held her arms out to the room around them and all the hospital equipment monitoring her vital signs. "Take this in. Remember it. All of this was caused by you and your daughter. It was caused by both of you and your selfishness." "I caused it?" Victoria suddenly laughed. "Rachel, I heard you on the phone before I walked in." The anger and self-righteousness suddenly drained from Rachel's face. "If I hadn't heard you before I got into the room, I might have let that get to me," Victoria continued. "I hope I would have been smarter than that, but you know, I might have taken the blame. But unfortunately for you, I heard you. Was this all worth it? Endangering your daughter like this and putting her in the hospital too?" What did you hear?" Rachel asked, trying to compose herself. She reminded herself that she didn't know for sure exactly what Victoria knew, and she shouldn't give away what happened unless Victoria truly had her dead to rights. "You set that fire yourself for sympathy, to make Michael look bad for leaving you," Victoria announced triumphantly to the shrinking Rachel. "But you didn't intend to harm yourself. The fire spread in a way that trapped you upstairs, inhaling smoke before you were able to get out. And it's especially rich that you gestured to this hospital room, like it's proof that you're a victim. Because I also heard you say that your symptoms aren't actually that bad. You've been playing them up. You and your daughter could have died, and you're reveling in the attention because it's an opportunity to attack Michael, Olivia, and me." Rachel had been caught. She assessed the situation before her, thinking through her options, and knew it wasn't good. There wasn't a way to get out of this. "You're right. I wasn't expecting you to hear that phone call. I wouldn't have taken it if I'd known you were coming, obviously," Rachel said bitterly. "But it was worth it. It doesn't matter what might have happened because Monica and I are fine, and we do have a chance to turn the tides in our favor. No press is bad press, and especially if I can get Michael back in the end, then yes, it will definitely have been worth it." Victoria knew Rachel was twisted, but she still felt horrified to hear all of this out loud. Your daughter's life is just a bargaining chip to you, worth the risk to get your ex back. Have you ever thought through what it would have felt like if you hadn't been so lucky to get rescued before something bad happened? That didn't happen, Victoria, so it does not matter. What matters is that Michael will regret letting this happen for the rest of his life. He will remember Monica for the rest of her life. Monica will be his most important daughter, and I will be his wife. Rachel looked out the window with a smile, and Victoria noticed a crazed glint in her eyes. Yes, it was all worth it.